It's Monday, April 9th. I'm Scott.
I'm Rim.
This is Geeknights. Tonight we teach you all about the domain name service.
Let's do this. So I've been slowly putting together a new computer bit by bit. I've mentioned it briefly every now and again. And I've watched the price come down from $2,000 to about $1,000 over the last few months for effectively the same, if not more powerful computer.
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much just need something that can run the hotness games, encode the podcast faster.
Well, most
not
importantly,
crash.
I need a very powerful machine with a lot of RAM so I can do a lot of audio editing in real time, real quickly, so I can experiment around a lot. Plus, I want to have a fast computer. Despite all the years I've had computers, I've only owned 4 total. Because I keep one forever, and then eventually it dies. I spend a ton of money to get another one that's super powerful, and then eventually it dies years and years and years later. But the thing is, I've been leaning, surprisingly, toward Intel and a Core 2 Duo.
Yeah, I know. It's like, if you asked me a year or two ago, I wouldn't even thought of Intel. I'd be like, Intel, why would you buy one of those? Because, Pentium 4 days, Pentium 4s are crap. Who would want one of those things?
And before that, you could buy an AMD chip for $200, or get an Intel chip that was the same speed for like $800.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. But now, these Core 2 Duos, man, they are the hotness.
They're incredibly hot.
I have one at work. Goddamn.
They were still slightly more expensive than the AMDs, but they performed a lot better. They were generally better architecture, and I thought, all right, I'm going Intel. And I've been watching Intel and making Intel systems with Core 2 Duos, and I just picked out everything. It was all set. I was going to get the E6600 Core 2 Duo, and everything was going to be awesome. Today, AMD announced like 50% price cuts across most of their line, and now I can get the highest end Athlon 64 X2 for like $100 less than the Core 2 Duo I was looking at.
Yeah.
And so now I'm looking at AMD motherboards again.
That's fine, because the AMD motherboards are actually a lot nicer than the Intel motherboards, and they're also friendlier to people building computers.
Yeah, well, unless you spend $300 to get those awesome 8-bit Intel motherboards.
Yeah, those things though, they're just out of control. It's like too much.
Thing is, now I gotta hold out, because April 22nd, when Intel drops their prices,
Yep.
I just don't think they're gonna drop them enough. I don't think they're gonna drop the price of the Core 2 by 50%.
I'm still dealing with one new computer that's sitting on my lap, so it's gonna be a while before I buy another new computer.
I'm really looking forward to this. I mean, I got a touch of it when I got Jameson here, and I started doing that new computer thing to it.
Okay, that's a $20 computer. You're saying the $20 computer is better than yours?
Actually, it's not. Despite the fact that the processor is about 70% faster and better architecture than my current main computer. Because of the motherboard and because
$20.
Well, one, it's a crap motherboard. It's the worst.
It's $20. What do you expect?
All right.
You should be happy it works. That's a miracle in and of itself.
Aside from the fact that the video barely works, the onboard sound, if the processor gets taxed at all, I can hear it making noise in the sound card.
It's just so awesome.
But despite the fact that this computer is so much faster than my current computer, one, this thing's running Ubuntu, which, while great, is not the most optimized Linux. Two, $20 motherboard. So my old Thunderbird Gigahertz still runs circles around this thing.
Yeah, Gen 2 is pretty awesome.
Despite the fact that this is a Gen 2 that has not been updated in any way in about a year.
Yeah.
I'm running an old-ass Firefox. I typed emerge, and it didn't just say, oh, you gotta update your profile. Blinking red text, and it basically said, what the fuck are you trying to do?
That's what happens on the hosting if I try to do that. So, I usually make lunch at work. I bring a loaf of bread and a peanut butter and a jelly to work, and I have one knife at work that I wash.
It's peanut butter jelly time?
Yeah, that's right.
Peanut butter jelly time?
It's really economical because I get a lot of lunch, because 2 sandwiches is pretty filling. It's real easy. I don't have to leave work and waste time. I can leave work slightly earlier and no one complains because I sat there all day. And it's really cheap because a loaf of bread is like $2. And peanut butter and jelly, you buy it once, it lasts weeks.
See, I tried that, but one, no number of peanut butter and jellies will sate me.
I can be sated by 2 peanut butter and jellies.
I can't. I just can't do it. So I always buy some ham or some turkey or something, some sort of meat, and then I need some other stuff, because just a sandwich, like 2 pieces of bread and a piece of ham, after a couple days at that, that's really going to get to you.
Yep.
But if I buy different kinds of meat, then I don't save any money. I might as well eat out every day.
So today, I knew I was out of bread at work, and I didn't have a loaf of bread to bring to work. And when I looked around near work for a place to buy a loaf of bread, and I didn't look very hard, but I couldn't find one in my cursory search.
Well, yeah, contrary to
Of like
popular
a
belief,
one-block radius.
there are grocery stores in New York City.
There are. They're just, not obvious. They're not like Super Stop and Shops or Wegmans or anything.
Well, they're also not right next to the area you work.
That's correct. It's just clothing stores there. So, it was very lucky that Emily randomly called me and said, hey, do you want to go get lunch? And I was like, yes. Oh, my God. So, we just started walking, randomly towards the Chinatown area, looking for a place to eat, whatever. And she said, first we passed by this place that sold candy. And it was all sorts of Asian candies, and you just shoveled them.
I really like Asian candy.
So I went in there. The place is called, I'm looking at the bag, hold on, Aji Ichiban. And I went in there, and I looked at the candy, and they had some dried fruits and, usual stuff. And then I see the marshmallows that are filled with gummy.
Marshmallows that are filled with gummy are amazing. These are almost better than a koala.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen these things. It's basically it's like a white powdery disc that's about an inch in diameter, maybe a little over an inch in diameter, and it's squishy. And inside of it, it's made of marshmallow, but the middle of it has a gummy artificial fruit flavor stuff in it, and it's individually wrapped. And they had every flavor of this stuff. I had only thought there was a strawberry flavor. So I shoveled strawberry and apple, and I didn't want to shovel any more because that would have been too much. And that cost me like $2. Then we kept walking looking for a place to eat. And Emily said there was a place that had dumplings on the cheap, but she didn't see it. We saw it on the way back, and we're like, oh, there it is.
Yep. That's got to really suck. You want to eat a dumpling, and you can't find the place.
This place, she said, for like $1, you can get a bunch of dumplings.
God, I got to go there, get some dumplings.
I'm going to go there probably with some coworkers if I get a chance. I'll be like, hey, let's go to the dumpling house. Anyway, instead we went to this random Chinese lunch bakery type place. I got a pork bun, and I got this like Danish roll twisty kind of bun with a hot dog in it. And it was actually pretty good. They were $1 each. It was real cheap. And then we walked outside, and there was this place I saw. You know what this place is called?
What was it called?
Egg Custard King.
That's not a good... All right. So, way back at RIT, none of us, well, at least most of us, had never been to a dim sum breakfast, a Chinese breakfast, where basically people will come by, and they've got a cart full of stuff, and you point at little tiny servings of various things, and they just put them on the table. And you just keep doing this until you're full. And there'll be like little dumpling thing with red bean paste in it, or some tripe, or all these little things. And they're all awesome. We can eat
Except for tripe.
I do not hate tripe.
You don't get it on purpose.
I will not go out of my way to ingest tripe. Unlike Kat, who can eat like 4 pounds of it, despite the fact that she's... Anyway. And one of the things that they will have is called an egg custard. And it's a little tiny pastry, and it's basically just a little like pie crust shell, and inside of it is a custard made from effectively egg yolk.
Yep.
And not a lot else, as far as I can tell.
Nope.
They're about 5,000 calories each.
Uh-huh.
And they're delectable.
Yes, so we were hesitant to actually go into the Custard King. Like, after we ate at the bakery, we walked over there and looked at the Custard King, and we were like,
That's dangerous. Our friend Luke almost ate my hand trying to get half of an egg custard.
So I went in to the Custard King, right? The Egg Custard King, and I saw egg custards and many other, among other things. But not only did they have plain egg custards, they had quite a few different flavors of egg custard.
What flavor could you have other than egg?
Well, egg custards were 75 cents each. They had egg, they had strawberry. I forget the other flavors, but
strawberry egg?
But I had honeydew.
Honeydew.
I had a honeydew egg custard.
So you had a money melon egg custard.
That's right.
I imagine
it was 75 cents.
Because you're talking about this that it was as good as I could imagine.
It was basically you bit into it and it tasted like, well, crust. And then it tasted like egg custard. And then it tasted like I guess honeydew.
We should probably do a show on all these Asian foods we like.
I don't know. We do too many food shows.
We've held off on that for a while.
I know, but I feel bad doing food shows in a geek show.
Hey, I think the worst was way back when we got our friend Adam on the show, because he's really funny. We like having him on the show. But we didn't have a topic, so we ended up talking about
That was
food.
your idea. I wanted to talk about something else.
You didn't suggest anything.
I didn't have an idea, but I knew I didn't want that one.
Yeah.
I don't have to know what I want to know what I don't want. And you know what I do want? I want egg custards.
Anyway, in the news, and I find this...
and one more thing. I'm looking for the Bean Curd King. If anyone knows where Bean Curd King is.
I don't know what I like more, red bean or black bean.
I'm a red bean fan.
I think I'm more of a red bean fan, but I cannot deny the black bean is delectable.
All right.
I
So
said delectable twice. I feel like hedonism bot.
let's do the show.
Anyway, especially you, hedonism bot. Anyway, so Blu-ray and HDVD have one thing in common.
HDVD.
HDDVD. What about it?
You need to say D 2 times.
Yeah, I like that. Well, maybe I could say HD squared VD.
HDDVD?
Well, if I
don't
simplified further, it would technically be HVD to the third. Because, but then again, is it HD minus DVD? Because then it's all sorts of pain in the ass.
It's HD parenthesis D to the VD. I don't know.
D to the VD? Where the fuck did you get that?
I was just making shit up.
Anyway, one thing they share in common is the DRM in them. You might know how DVDs all have CSS, and then the Linux community responded with DCSS that removed CSS and allowed you to watch DVDs.
Yes.
I'm not going to go into all the technical details.
No, that's like we could do a whole show with the story of DCSS.
But I'll put this in real simple terms. WinDVD is this garbage program that lets you watch DVDs in Windows.
Which I don't understand why, you need like a special program to watch DVDs in Windows.
Because you can't have a program that decodes DVD without paying the license fee. That's why there were no technically
Yeah, but can't
legal...
Windows Media Player do it?
No, because they didn't pay the license fee.
Really? I thought it could.
It might now, but back in the day it didn't at all.
Because they have, I think if you have the Windows Media Center, you can do it.
Yeah, but the point is, way back in the day when WinDVD was spawned, you couldn't play DVDs on a computer.
Yeah, people had DVD-ROMs, but you couldn't actually watch DVDs if you put the DVD in the DVD-ROM.
Partly because there was no software.
There was no software.
And partly because computers weren't fast enough.
Yep, you could only use the DVD-ROM to get data off of DVDs.
I had a friend who had a hardware DVD decoder plugged into his video card with a special
that was the only way.
Internal cable.
Yep. That was the only way to watch DVDs on a computer originally, was to have a DVD-ROM, connect the DVD-ROM to a video card, to another card that connected to the video card with cables that were inside and all weird.
Well, no, there was those other ones, those horrible video cards where you had to have a VGA coming out of your video card into this DVD thing and then out of the DVD thing into your monitor.
Basically, it was a card with a chip on it, and all that chip did was take DVD data and MPEG-2 and convert it into something you could see that your monitor understands.
Anyway, to not go into technical detail, even though I've already said that,
Yep.
the DRM that is on these things is in WinDVD-8 because otherwise WinDVD-8 wouldn't be able to play HD, DVD, or Blu-ray.
Of course, WinDVD paid to get that stuff, right?
Well, WinDVD, in all appearances, did not do their due diligence in protecting the decryption method or the key or whatever they've got.
So someone with a copy of WinDVD busted it open and figured out how to break HD DVD.
So it looks like someone started using this busted key to rip HD content and put it on BitTorrent.
Woot!
And as far as I can read from this article, it looks like the people responsible for AACS encryption have revoked this key. And that is the news, ladies and gentlemen. For you see, if you have a DVD player that plays Blu-ray or HD DVD, and some hacker out there compromises the key that your player uses, your player is just going to stop working because they're going to revoke the keys your player uses.
Yep, any new disc is going to use a different key, and
Well, it's actually,
you're going to need to update your player to play those
It's
new
actually
discs.
more complicated than that.
Really?
New discs will include in them a list of revoked keys and fuck up any DVD player that they get put in. So it'll say, by the way, your key's revoked, so the only way to avoid getting your key revoked is to not ever buy a new HD,
But
DVD,
won't it
or Blu-ray.
also give you a new key?
Well, see, by default, no.
How do you get the new key?
Well, it depends on whether or not your player has a method. Maybe your manufacturer will be lucky, or you'll be lucky, and they'll send you a special DVD that'll patch it or something. Or maybe, because I think Blu-ray players are mandated to have an Ethernet hole.
Yeah,
so you could probably get an update like that.
The original HD DVD players were actually Linux computers that Toshiba was giving out.
Yeah, but not all HD DVD players apparently have to have this port. So there might be HD DVD players that aren't updatable. And even then, with the Blu-ray, you're going to have to connect to the internet and do a bunch of stuff to make it work again.
Wow.
Luckily for people who use WinDVD can just send out a patch.
Uh-huh.
But this does not bode well for yon consumer if you can have a piece of hardware that plays media, and based on the arbitrary actions of people you have nothing involved with, that hardware could cease to function.
Awesome.
This is the first case of this, so of course...
Or even worse, you'll need an internet connection to watch DVDs.
So of course, the internet is all abuzz about it. I'll wait to see what the exact details are as to whether exactly what happened here. I'm sure, now especially if this is a proof of concept, we're going to see a lot more of this, because there's nothing hacker punk kids like more than causing problems like this for normal consumers.
You know, but really, I have no sympathy because these companies cause the problems for themselves, and people who buy their DRM products get what they deserve.
Yeah, the only reason I am not jumping on any sort of HD bandwagon is that every 5 minutes they change the standards or do whatever they can to DRM me a little bit more.
And it costs a lot of money, and who cares?
Yeah. Granted, it's almost to the point where it might be worth it if I had a bunch of money laying around and it weren't DRM'd.
Yeah, I mean, just to make... free up some room in the living room.
Yeah.
Put a flat screen on the wall instead of, yeah. So, for anyone out there who uses instant messaging, which should be most people, you might use AIM, you might use ICQ, who knows?
If you're a loser, you might use MSN
or Yahoo. Or who knows? I don't care what you use.
If you're awesome, you probably use Jabber.
Yep, only awesome people use Jabber. And all Jabber users are awesome.
And Google Chat is basically just Jabber.
Yeah, it's Jabber powered by Google, which is fine. No matter what protocol you're using for instant messaging, you probably have some client or another. Maybe use the one that goes with your instant messenger. You might use the actual MSN client, or you maybe use the actual AOL AIM client. Maybe use Trillion or something like that. Maybe you're like me and you use PSI or Psy or Psy, however you want to say it. I don't care. But a very popular one is the open source Gaim, or Gaim, however you want to pronounce it.
It's pronounced Gaim as far as I'm concerned, and
Yeah.
Gaim people can die in a fire.
I agree with Rim. It is Gaim.
Because game sounds lame.
It does, and Gaim sounds like something I play or talk about on Tuesdays.
Anyway,
Gaim is a very awesome client that I used to use, but I don't use anymore, only because it doesn't fully support Jabber. And you'd think Jabber is the open source protocol. It should support that one better than the other ones.
yeah, as far as I can tell, the developers of Gaim are just lazy.
I think so. But Gaim is a pretty good IM client if you're not using Jabber. And it allows you to sign into a whole bunch of things at once, and they've been doing a lot of updates to it. And
Yeah,
it has some
tabs, all sorts of fun stuff.
It has some cool features. It's much better than using the standard AOL client, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, if you're not using Psy or Gaim or Adium, I don't know what you're doing, because there really aren't many better ones than those three.
Oh, Amiibo.com.
Amiibo.com.
Yep. Anyway, Gaim originally was called GTK Plus AOL Instant Messenger, because all it was an open source AOL Instant Messenger that ran and used the GTK Plus GUI library.
And apparently AOL said, hey, you can't have AOL Instant Messenger in the name of your product.
Yep, so they changed the name to Gaim, and AOL kind of laid off. But then later, AOL started to harass them a little bit more. And so finally, just now, without telling anyone, they decided on their own, because they weren't able to reveal the reason they were changing the name.
Most likely AOL forced them to not reveal it, and AOL sued them or threatened to sue them and had some sort of deal.
Yeah, anyway. Gaim is now called Pidgin, P-I-D-G-I-N, and not like the bird.
Or the Pokemon Pidgeotto.
No, not like that. It's Pidgin as in what happens when people who know different languages try to communicate and create a new combined language of some sorts. A good example of a pidgin would be from 2 or 3 centuries ago in Canton, as in Cantonese Canton. There was Americans, there were Chinese people, and there were Portuguese people, and they couldn't really communicate very well. So a pidgin was created, sort of not intentionally, but it just happens. This third language that sort of combines all three in a bastardized way so that these three groups of people who don't speak each other's language can communicate to trade.
Fun stuff. Now, while this is a very apt name, I'm going to keep calling it Phoenix. I mean, Firebird. I mean, Gaim.
I mean, the Revolution.
Yes.
I mean, the Wii.
Capstone.
Yes. I used to think that changing names of things, people would always stick with the old name forever. But no, people are going to call this Pidgin from pretty much now on. I give up.
I don't know. I really think I won't call it Pidgin.
Well, we'll wait.
Partly because, unlike other things, this Gaim looks like Gaim. It looks like AOL Instant Messenger, only done better.
The thing is, I've seen some screenshots, and they're changing the look of it a bit.
I don't want them to change the look of it.
Well, they're not really changing the layout, but they're changing, like, the colors and stuff. So it's definitely not... Doesn't look like Gaim.
But
it's got some blue in there. And some,
I like the lame, thin gray.
I'm sure
here's what bothers me
you can
about
change
all
your
this.
GTK theme to make it look however you want.
People are allowed to change their names, whatever. I mean, it worked for Firefox, but here's my issue. Gaim called itself Gaim, G-A-I-M, because AOL was messing with them over the name. Now, AOL, back then, never used AIM, AIM, in any official capacity at all. And apparently they...
And then eventually they did.
Apparently they trademarked it fairly recently, and now they're going after Gaim, despite the fact that Gaim took the name Gaim long before.
Yeah. Of course, AOL has had, like, AIM.com for a long time.
Yeah, but how long?
I know, we got to figure out the dates on that stuff, but I don't really care about that. The point is, Gaim is changing its name. It's kind of annoying. Yet another open source project has changed the name.
From this distant vantage point, the Earth might not seem of any particular interest. But for us, it's different. Consider again that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us.
What you've just heard is an excerpt from Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot, which is a very excellent book, and if you haven't read it, you really should.
Yeah, I mean, I knew the name Carl Sagan, but
Scott asked me, what, so he's a sci-fi author, right?
Because that's what I associated the name with. I don't know why. I mean, I knew he was a famous person who had to do with science or science fiction or something. And now I think I have to go and check it out because I feel kind of dumb only knowing the name and not knowing anything else.
Yes, well, the thing is, Pale Blue Dot was written partly because way back, Voyager 1, which got very, very far away from planet Earth, took a picture of Earth, a very famous picture, where Earth is literally this tiny, tiny, barely visible speck amidst a sea of billions of specks in a sunbeam all by itself. Basically, what my thing of the day is, and this has been on Oliver Dig, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen it, but I think it bears mentioning. This is an excerpt of Carl Sagan reading his own book, and Carl Sagan is a very engaging reader and a writer.
Yeah, he sounds like a narrator. Like, I didn't think that was him. I thought it was just some guy reading it.
So again, if you've never read this book, this is a very eloquent and beautiful explanation of a lot of concepts that you really should be at least a little bit familiar with.
Of course, if you're crazy, you'll just say, I don't believe any of that stuff he's saying. The Earth is the center of the universe. It's bigger than everything. Jupiter is just an illusion.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that all you got?
Yeah.
All right. So I got to hear a video for you. This video is 30 seconds long. It is well worth more than 30 seconds.
We really shouldn't explain what this video is because you've got to see it.
I want to tell you this video contains what I would call a Russian hacker.
I would call it Russian ingenuity.
Yes. See, hackers are many things, but the core of what a hacker is someone who takes things and gets more out of them than you expect. Someone who takes the toaster and turns it into a computer. Someone who takes a pencil and turns it into a slingshot.
Someone who takes some duct tape and a rubber band and makes a car drive another 40,000 miles.
Exactly. This is a Russian hacker who is using a machine in a way that it was not intended, but to great effect. And also for great humor.
Good God. just watch this and you'll see what we mean.
In Soviet Russia.
I can't believe you tried to make a Soviet Russia joke. What are you going to say? Boat paddles you? Joke makes you? What? What were you going to say after that?
You own hacker? Because normally hackers own you? I don't know. Yeah.
That wasn't funny.
No, it wasn't. That's all I could think of.
Right. So, all that aside, for the last several weeks, we've been doing various How Computers Work, or How Computers Work in layman's term Mondays, which have been greeted with a great amount of enthusiasm from people in the forums and from the countless emails we've been getting about them.
I mean, originally we didn't like these episodes so much, but now seems like people like them a lot, and it's getting better for us to do them.
Well, I think part of it was early on we went into great technical depth on very narrow subjects, and most people just glazed over and didn't care about what a flip-flop was. So then we tried to be more accessible, and everything started working out. I mean, we're not doing the dumb DNS translates names into numbers, the end. But at the same time, I'm not going to talk about what the serial numbers mean or how exactly you should set up a caching DNS server.
No, that's not necessary. Yeah.
But at the same time, DNS, or Domain Name Service, or Domain Name System, or whatever you want to call it, regardless of whether you know about it, is one of the most important things on the internet, and it's also something that you interact with constantly.
I mean, without it, technically, the internet could work. It would just suck ass.
Actually, I would submit that now, with the age of Google, you could really do just fine without domain names.
Perhaps.
I almost never type URLs in. I just type things into Google.
Yes, but there are things where the domain name service allows people to do pretty tricky stuff. For example, if you
Email.
Well, especially when people have web applications. You know, you write a web application and you say, hey, web application, connect to this, URL and get stuff. And then if that person who runs that other URL is free to move their server around and stuff can still work without people having to rewrite web applications all the time.
Well, you see, all DNS does is you've got IP addresses on the internet. You might remember we talked about IP addresses, so you should at least understand what that is.
Every machine on the internet has an IP address.
It's effectively your address, and if you want to go to Google, you type in Google's address, which is actually a number. Well, numbers kind of suck to remember. I mean, who wants to remember that 129.21.21.1 is the thing you want to connect to?
Yeah, I mean, imagine if, you're watching a commercial and it was, for Ford cars, and they said, hey, you want to check out information on Ford cars, go to 625-452-793, who knows, crazy numbers.
Yes.
It wouldn't work.
So what DNS does is it's a system whereby you can have names that are authoritatively assigned to these numbers. So if I want to go to Google, I don't know their number, but I know their name, Google. So I type www.google.com, and DNS translates that into the address of Google and sends all my stuff to Google.
Yeah, you type in the name, some computer somewhere, we'll tell you how in a second, figures out what number that name is equal to, gives you the number. You don't actually see the number unless you want to look at it. And then your computer, once it knows the number, can actually talk to the server and do all its business.
Now, on its base, that's it.
That's all it does, people. It doesn't do anything else.
And if you have an ISP, which obviously you do because you're getting on the internet somehow, they probably gave you, if they didn't set it up automatically via something called DHCP or Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, which I don't think we've talked about. But
no, we'll talk about it soon.
We'll talk about it at some point, even though it's also actually very simple.
It is.
At least on this level.
Yes.
But they'll provide you one. They run a DNS server. So whenever you want to type something in to go somewhere, all the questions you ask, all the names that get turned into numbers, it's all done by that DNS server that your ISP runs. So you don't even have to run an ISP server or anything.
Yep. So you want to visit frontrowcrew.com. You go open up your browser, type in frontrowcrew.com. Your browser goes and it goes to your ISP's DNS server. So if your ISP is, I don't know, Roadrunner, it goes to the Roadrunner DNS server and says, hey, Roadrunner DNS server, what's the IP address of frontrowcrew.com? And it tells you.
Yep. Now, behind the scenes, Roadrunner.com's DNS server might not know. It might only know about all the Roadrunner stuff.
Yeah, what if nobody who uses Roadrunner ever went to frontrowcrew.com before? The server never bothered to find out the number. It doesn't know.
So what it does, and all DNS servers for the most part do this, is if it doesn't know the answer, it knows who it can ask to get the answer. And in turn, those people know who they can ask to get the next answer. And it goes all the way up, and at the top of the internet, you might have heard about every now and then there are these attacks on the root servers of the internet. And you might have wondered what that was. Well, it turns out the DNS, if you keep going up and servers keep asking higher up servers, eventually there's a top. The top are the 13 root DNS servers. They're scattered around the world.
Aren't they named like A, B, C, D?
They are, in fact, named A, B, C, D. There are only
E, F, G,
13
H, I,
of
J.
them, partly due to a limitation of the way they were named and the way they were assigned early on. That limitation remains, and also 13 has been more than enough to satisfy the world.
Yeah, people keep trying to attack these servers to completely if they were successful in disabling all these servers,
The internet would still work almost 90% for a long time.
yep, but you just wouldn't be able to turn names into numbers as quickly, or maybe not at all.
Actually, no, it's much less than that. If the root server stopped working, due to caching and the fact that the majority of traffic is known and a lot of people keep copies of other DNS databases, 99% of web traffic would still continue on as normal.
Awesome. But anyways,
It'd
yeah.
be more of a long-term problem with there being no authoritative answer, and there'd be a lot of ways you could screw with people.
Anyway, people have tried to attack these things with varying measures of success, and no one has been able to make a dent in the functioning of the DNS system.
I think once 4 or 5 of them were taken down, which wasn't even half, so it wasn't an issue.
I think the guys did more damage when they attacked Akamai than when they attacked the DNS servers.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was in, I think, like the second year of college, maybe? I don't remember when that happened, but I remember it happening.
So, I guess before we go any further, because obviously we're stretching here, since DNS is actually very simple without going into great technical detail.
Yep.
But you type in a URL, www.frontrowcrew.com or www.google.com, and there are a lot
Or
of,
.net or
of
something.
misconceptions as to what all those parts mean. So we're going to break it down very simply. Now, you type them in, from right to left, www.frontrowcrew.com.
But
The
it's
way
backward.
The way it's organized and the way computers look at them is actually backwards. So the way you would write that URL, as far as the computer is concerned, would be .com.frontrowcrew.www.
Mm-hmm.
It goes from least specific to most specific. It's a big tree, a big hierarchy, and at the top, there's one thing, the root, the dot. Because everything has the root and the dot, you leave it out. So you don't type www.frontrowcrew.com because it's assumed that you're going to the root. That's the top. It's like root in a Linux computer.
Yep, remember how we talked about how all the servers keep asking the next guy, and they eventually ask the root servers. Well, the computers are arranged in a hierarchy, and the names are also in a hierarchy.
So I want to go to www.frontrowcrew.com, and I type it in. My computer goes to my ISP's DNS server, and now I'm going to not go over how it actually works now because there's a lot of tricks to make it faster and better. But this is how it works in theory, and this is what you should really know. It's kind of like knowing the OSI model, even though a lot of things violate it or
Yeah.
jump around and layers are all weird sometimes. The concept is still solid, and this is how it works logistically and effectively. So it asks the root server, all right, I'm looking for the root. And it says, I'm the root. What are you looking for? Then it says, all right, root, who would I ask to find out where com is? And the root server would say, go there. So then I go there and say, all right, com, I want to know where Front Row Crew is. And it would say frontrowcrew.com is there. And then I would go to frontrowcrew.com and I would ask it, all right, in Front Row Crew, where is www? And it would say, right there.
Yep, and that's how come, for example, yesterday we set up wesnoth.frontrowcrew.com, right? You can set up all sorts of things under your domain, all sorts of different machines.
Now, herein lies the common misconception. A lot of people, they see a web browser and you see that http://, and it's always there. And very few people realize that what that does is it says, I'm going to use the hypertext transport protocol. That is the protocol I'm using to connect to whatever I'm going to type next. But because you're on the web, everything you're doing is HTTP, so it doesn't really matter. It's just there on every URL.
Yep, sometimes you might do FTP or something else, but that's not very often, and usually use a different piece of software to do that. So your web browser is pretty much 99.9% of the time always going to be HTTP.
Now, www, a lot of people think, is also something like that. www means World Wide Web, right? So
No.
I type www, and that means I'm going out on the World Wide Web, and then I'm going to frontrowcrew.com.
No, it doesn't mean that.
Very simply, if you look at a URL, the further right you go, the more general it is, and the further left you go, the more specific it is. So on the far right, you've got com. That's a top-level domain. there are very few of them. Gov, int, org, net,
Mil,
com,
biz,
info,
edu, and then there's different countries.
So starting there, move a little bit to the left now, front row crew. That is a domain. So I can have frontrowcrew.com. It is the front row crew domain inside of the com top level domain. Now, frontrowcrew.net could be something totally different. Frontrowcrew.int could be something totally different from all that. Com, int, gov, all these top level domains are entirely separate. Now, here's the interesting part. www is not a domain. It's the name of a computer. It doesn't mean World Wide Web. Sure, it tends to stand for that, and a lot of people use www to be the name of their web server. www.frontrowcrew.com takes you to our web server, but we could have foobar.frontrowcrew.com, and that could be our web server. There is no inherent meaning in www. It is just a commonly used name of a web server.
Yeah, I could put any name I wanted there and point it at any IP address I want. Any name, any IP address, it doesn't matter. I could make a name and point it at someone else's IP address. Nothing they could do about it.
I could have multiple World Wide Web servers running internet stuff. So I could have www.frontrowcrew.com that has a web page. I could have rim.frontrowcrew.com that has my personal blog.
You could do anything you want. Any name, any number. It's all
Now,
good.
in general, the one on the far right is always the top level domain. And the one on the far left is always the name of the computer you are connecting to. In the middle, you can have a whole bunch of others. You see, you have a domain. You can have subdomains under that and subdomains under that. So we could have the domain foobar.frontrowcrew.com. And then inside of foobar, we could have www and wesnoth and FTP and all those things.
So it'd be www.frontrowcrew.com.
Yep. So if you look at the top level country domains, which is something you might run into if you ever go to Japanese websites, or actually also things like Delicious.
Yeah, or UK websites, or...
Because remember, the internet basically started in the United States. So there was com, edu, and all these things. And people just never really thought about the fact that there would be other countries someday on the internet, or that it might matter. Because there's also country codes. .us is a top-level domain.
Yep.
So if you want a com within US, com is a subdomain of US in that case. So you could have foobar.com or foobar.co.us. That might sound weird. That's because for various reasons that you don't need to worry about, whenever people use the top-level domains that aren't the normal ones, whenever they use something other than com in edu, but something like US or JP or CX, it's convention that the one next under that, like com, edu, whatever, will be shortened to 2 digits. I forget exactly why, because it really doesn't matter.
Yep, so if we were in Japan, our URL would probably www.frontrowcrew.co.jp.
Yep, that's basically the com domain within the JP domain.
Mm-hmm.
And then Front Row Crew is the domain inside of both of those. And then www is the name of our web server. You see how this works? It's actually really simple, other than all the little intricacies and things that don't really matter.
Yes. See, the real trick of DNS is that, okay, yeah, all it is turning names into numbers. To turn names into numbers on such a worldwide scale is incredibly complex, and there's a billion secret things that go on that you don't have to understand, so don't worry about it.
However, the fact that it's so complex is the reason that, for example, a lot of people wonder, how come there's so few top-level domains? There's no reason why I shouldn't be able to have anything I want. Why can't I have bob.rim, or just a domain that's just com, or bubba.bubba.bubba if I wanted? There's no reason not to.
I vote for the Bubba top-level domain. That's necessary.
Except for the fact that the only reason DNS works is because it's a distributed database. It's all over the world. Every domain has its own DNS server taking care of it, and you ask all the way up the chain, and then you ask all the way back down the chain to eventually get to where you're going. So each server only needs to know about its own tiny part of the internet, or if it's a bigger server, it only needs to know where to ask all those other parts of the internet. So the servers taking care of the com top-level domain only need to know about com, and the root servers only need to know where the server that takes care of com is.
Yeah, the root server doesn't know about Front Row Crew. It doesn't know crap about Front Row Crew.
Yeah.
It knows about com, net, org, US, and all that. That's all it knows.
That's all it ever does. In fact, that's the only thing the root servers will ever answer for you as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, if you go to the root server and say, hey, where's frontrowcrew.com? It says, com that way. Think about it, you have these 13 giant, super important computers, and all they ever say is, com, org, com, edu, Japan, com, Germany, com.
So it's critical that the entire structure is hierarchical, that there's a tree starting from a root and then branching out from there. Because you can have any number of branches. Well, there is technically a limit on the number of branches.
Yes,
but
the number of letters in the language.
actually, no, it's actually fairly complicated. You can have any number of subdomains up to a certain number, and each subdomain can be up to, I think, 63 characters or so long as the total URL does not exceed 255 characters. There's a bunch of arbitrary rules out there.
We should set up, like in a lab, a bunch of DNS servers and just try to make it as crazy as we possibly can with as many subdomains as we can.
You can trivially look up the exact rules of what works and what doesn't.
No, but I want to actually try it and like do it.
Why?
For fun.
It'll either work or not. Or you can futz with bind to make it work even if it wasn't supposed to work.
Oh, really? That sounds fun.
You can do a lot of DNS servers will fudge things in order to make it faster or more reliable. VeriSign actually got in trouble a while ago by not following the rules and setting it up so that if you typed in a domain for their servers that wasn't an actual domain, it would take you to their webpage, show you an advertisement, and all sorts of nastiness.
Yeah, I remember when they tried that. It was like, if you typed in any URL that didn't map to anything, like there was nothing set for that, no one had that domain, it would always go to VeriSign's magic search page.
It was bad news.
It was very bad news.
Now you might wonder, who runs these 13 servers that are scattered all over the world? Who gets to decide who gets a domain? I mean, we want frontrowcrew.com. What if the evil Front Row Crew at the BIT Anime Club decided that they wanted the Front Row Crew because of their business?
Yeah, I mean, what if, let's pick a random country. Zimbabwe was in charge of running all the root servers, and they decided they didn't like Front Row Crew. Hey, just take our domain away, and then what can we do about it?
Yeah, I mean, what's to stop a registrar, a person who gives out domain names or doing all that stuff, from saying, all right, Front Row Crew, we see you're getting kind of popular there. Give us 10 grand or we're taking away your domain and giving it to a porn site.
Yeah, I mean, the hierarchy is very resilient from a standpoint of performance and a system that is very hard to destroy. However, in terms of controlling the hierarchy, if you're holding on to all the stuff at the top, you can control all the stuff down low as well.
Now, the answer is, I guess not surprisingly, incredibly complicated and currently subject to a great deal of controversy.
Yes.
I'm going to dumb this down to the point that it may no longer even be technically correct. However, as far as anyone out there is concerned, this is effectively how it works. There is an organization called ICANN, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. They control DNS. They let registrars like VeriSign or whoever who want to control com or edu or whatever pay for the privilege of being able to control those domains, and they're semi-regulated by ICANN.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure VeriSign controls com, and I don't know who controls
It's
the other
complicated,
ones.
don't
Yeah.
worry about it. And then it leases all the way down, and then there are places like, I don't know, GoDaddy, or we use what, Gandhi?
Yeah, we use a French registrar, Gandi, Gandhi.net. They're pretty good.
Yeah, and really simply, if you want a domain, you just go to any person who is licensed by these people to give out domains, and they have to follow a very strict procedure to have the right to give out domains. It includes like a $50,000 non-refundable application fee, and if they decide to not let you do it, well, you're out 50 grand.
Yeah, and then they configure DNS servers in various places to, point your name at the IP address that you desire, and point your email at the various IP addresses you desire if you want that.
But if you want a domain, all you do is go to one of these people, and you say, I want a domain. And you tell them which one you want, and you pay them some small amount of money, and it's yours. And they'll set up the DNS for you and all that 99% of the time.
Yep. I mean, what do we pay? I think I pay like $30 a year. Probably even less. I think it's euros, actually. So it's hard to tell exactly how much we pay.
So what if there's contention? What if two people want the same domain?
First come, first serve.
That's it. It's first come, first serve.
And you can give up your domain to someone else. Basically, once you have control of a domain, it's locked in. No one else can take it. So if someone who has a DNS server, like let's say Rim has a DNS server, right? I bought frontrecruit.com. Rim on his DNS server, because he can do whatever he wants to his server, says frontrecruit.com is something else, blah. It's not going to work.
Yeah, because we have these root servers and everything above. So anyone in the world trying to get to the site isn't going to ask my piddly little DNS server. They're going to ask a real DNS server. Or if they're paranoid, they're going to ask a root DNS server and go from there. It's so difficult, normally, to compromise DNS in any realistic way.
Yep. But if I wanted to give Rim my domain that I already owned, there are things you can do to like say, okay, it is okay for someone to take my domain away from me, and you flick a switch, and then you can give it to someone and they give you money.
Now, this did lead to the problem of cyber squatting, whereby, say I know that there's some hot young company called, I don't know, Pensoft, and they're gonna go live and they're gonna need a website and all this business. Say I just go and get Pensoft for $5.
Yeah, pensoft.com is mine now.
Well, now I can extort them for practically any amount of money I want and just say, hey, I'll give you pensoft.com for $1,000.
Oh, that sucks. They're going to have to deal with like Pinsoft or something else. I don't know.
And there's very little recourse you have against this.
Yeah, there's not much you can do. If you're lucky and you're in a country with certain laws and they're in the same country as you, maybe you can do something. I think there's at least one successful suing case.
Yeah, it really depends on the situation. For example, if Ford Motor Company somehow lapsed and didn't update their domain, and I bought it out from under them when they didn't renew it, and then I tried to extort them and sell it back,
they'd just be like, trademark infringement, give it back.
The judges would probably just give it to them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you got to worry about that. There's also a scandal lately where if you go to a lot of registrars and you type in their little box that says, hey, is this domain free? There's people who watch that information, and if they see someone type a domain in, they register it knowing that you want it, and then they try to sell it to you.
Yeah, there's a lot of crazy people out there who they watch the news and they watch the internet, and depending on what's going on in the world, they'll just buy up domains.
The other problem with controversy lately is that ICANN and all of this is basically run 99% by the United States, which kind of bothers the rest of the world. Yet at the same time, no one else has ever really stepped up to actually be responsible for this. And the UN, well, a lot of people say, oh, the UN should take it over. I scoff at that for a lot of reasons.
Yes, I've read many articles about what various people at the UN have said about them taking DNS and whatnot.
And it comes down to the fact that the people involved with the UN and a lot of foreign countries who say DNS should be democratized to the world don't understand the technology at all. And if the US handed it over to them, it would basically fuck the internet up.
Yeah, the thing is, politics and technology don't mix. And what these people want to do is they want to get their politics all over our technology because they don't know about the technology.
Luckily,
so they're like, we need to change it this way because that works with our politics. And then, sorry, now everything's broken because you had to be an ass.
Luckily, however, ICANN is very highly watched by a lot of people, and it would be incredibly difficult for ICANN to do anything shady.
Yeah, basically ICANN is very careful with everything it does. That, you know, like recently they said no XXX domain and stuff like that. Because the second they slip up, people are going to be all over their case. They're on a very, how do you say?
They have a tenuous grasp on their power.
That's the word I was looking for.
And luckily, they've been doing a pretty bang-up job, all things considered. I mean, think of this. The internet is the wild, wild west. You know, www. It's the sea of worms and Trojans and leet AOL kidzors and garbage and child porn and drug trafficking and everything horrible ever. Meat spin and goatsy and people hacking each other left and right. It's chaos. The only reason your computer is not hacked 24/7 is because you're probably behind some sort of net, and it's just nightmare. Imagine having to be the arbiter for the entire world when it comes to what names people can use onto internet. That is what ICANN has to deal with every single day.
Yeah, I remember when they first created ICANN, because it used to just, I think it was just VeriSign before then. I don't remember. Or no, Network Solutions, right? I don't remember. But when I remember when they created ICANN, everyone was like, I'm skeptical of this ICANN. They're not going to be able to handle it. Everything's going to be fucked up. Oh, no. But they've done all right. Much better than expected. I mean, it still works. It's a miracle unto itself.
Here it is. All right, the original mandate for ICANN was actually from the U.S. government, and it was when Bill Clinton and George W. Bush were both in power. It was a long-term thing, and on January 30th, 1998, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, an agency of the U.S. Department of Commerce, issued for comment, quote, a proposal to improve the technical management of internet names and addresses. Blah, 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 ICANN. It's actually, there are many more paragraphs here I'm not going to read.
You can read it yourself, people.
Yeah, just go to the Wikipedia on ICANN if you actually care. The fact remains that what ICANN does has almost no effect on how the internet works currently.
And you don't have to worry about it on the personal level, but in the grand scheme, it is super important.
Now, we jumped around a little bit, partly because there's not a lot to say about how DNS works.
I mean, yeah, the episode really could have just been, hey, DNS, if you ask for what number goes with this name, and then it tells you. The end.
Yeah. However, if you're interested, let us know in the forums or email us. We could do another episode in the near future on DNS servers and talk actually about how a DNS server really works.
And how to set one up, why you would need one, all kinds of stuff like that.
Yep, because there's a lot of fun stuff there.
How to configure a domain, how to configure a domain in your house, maybe.
Yep, how email works with DNS. Now, it's actually kind of complicated.
Yeah, all we'll say is that email is weird and requires DNS to do special things in order for email to work.
The only other thing I'll bring up, because this is another common misconception, that people seem to think that because you have a .org domain, you gotta be a nonprofit. Or if you're a .edu, you technically have to be a school and all that business. And those rules have become laxer and laxer as time has gone on, especially for .org and .com and .net. And effectively, what top-level domain something uses is not a good indication of what that thing actually is.
Yeah.
Except .biz, which basically means I'm a shady and or craptacular company.
Or .foreign country, which means I'm from that foreign country.
Yes, usually. Granted, there was a big business in the countries who had domains like .tv or .cx selling their domain names to other people.
CX is the Christmas Islands. So, the Christmas Islands obviously is not going to have a lot of domains because they're not very large. So they were selling their domains to other people and all around the world, and thus you get goatse.cx and many other things like that.
Yep, of course, then they realized after all these years exactly what goatse.cx was and promptly destroyed it. But,
sigh.
Yeah, well, a small piece of the internet is fallen. That was like the fall of the Western Roman Empire right there. Now we've got the corrupt meat spin empire to take its place.
No.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Odeo. Just click the link that says Send Me an Odeo on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.